We surveyed people asking how many Instagram followers they think they have, how confident they were of their estimate, how much they care about their followers, and finally, how many followers they actually have.
We surveyed 48 people in the lunchroom by picking random tables, assigning random numbers to each person in the table, and then asking them a series of questions.
We surveyed 12 people in each of the following categories: upperclassmen boys, upperclassmen girls, underclassmen boys, and underclassmen girls, making the total number of people surveyed 48.
Can you estimate how many Instagram followers you have without looking at the number? You can be as precise as you want.
97.
I think like 100.
670.
Like 500-ish, maybe like 520.
So, how confident are you with intervals 1 to 10, 11 to 25, 26 to 50, or 50 plus?
50 plus.
Okay.
1 to 10.
Okay, 1 to 10.
Like 75.
You think you're like within 75?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. How many do you actually have?
Let's see the number. Oh, it's 521.
And then how much would you say you care about your follower count? Not at all, not really, somewhat, or very much?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Not that much.
You don't care, like not really at all? Okay, great to know. Thank you, man. Overall, when girls guessed how far away they were from their guesses, they were more accurate than boys. On average, people were 48% accurate with their predictions on how accurate they were. Here's a table showing the average accuracy based on class and gender.
Overall, IHS students estimated that they had less followers than they actually did. We also noticed that lowerclassmen answered slightly higher than upperclassmen. Here is a table showing the average differences, estimate minus actual.
The true difference mean of estimate minus actual followers was negative 8.725. The true difference was around 26.55. We noticed that girls had lower differences than boys on average. Here's a table showing how many followers each group was off by on average.
Of the people surveyed, it was more common for people to not care very much about their follower count, as shown in the table below. 50% of the people we surveyed said not at all, 35% not really, 15% somewhat, and 0% said they cared very much about their follower count. A greater proportion of girls selected not really or somewhat than boys, and slightly more upperclassmen than underclassmen. Here's a table showing a breakdown of the people who selected not really or somewhat, indicating that they cared to any extent about their follower count.
The null hypothesis is the difference between people's estimate of their followers count and actual is equal to 0. And the alternative hypothesis is the difference between the people's estimate of their follower count and actual is not equal to 0. This test is a two-way t-test, and the conditions are met because the random condition is met by the stratified random sample. The normality condition is met because n is equal to 48, which is greater than 30, and the independence condition is met because of the 10% rule. N is equal to 48, which is less than 10% of the IHS population. So the mean of the true difference is equal to negative 8.725. The standard deviation is 36.788, and n is 48. Additionally, the degrees of freedom is 47, and the alpha value is 0.05. So we found the t-value to be negative 1.6432, and we found the p-value to be 0.1071 from the t-value. Because of the p-value, 0.1071 is greater than 0.05, which is the alpha value, we failed to reject the null hypothesis. There is not convincing evidence that the difference between people's estimate of their follower count and actual count is not equal to 0.
We did a chi-squared test to see if there was an association between the age and gender group people were placed in and whether or not they could accurately assess their own accuracy at guessing their follower count. Our null hypothesis is that there was no association between the two variables, and our alternative hypothesis was that there is an association between the two variables. So we're doing a chi-squared test for independence, and the conditions are met because we took a stratified random sample, which meets the randomness condition. All expected counts are above 5, as shown in this table, which meets the large counts rule for normality. And the independence condition is also met because n is 48 in our sample, which is less than 10% of the population of IHS. Here is the data that we used for our calculation, and we calculated that the chi-squared value was 4.925 with a degrees of freedom of 3, making the p-value 0.1774. Because this p-value is greater than 0.05, which is our alpha value, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. We do not have convincing evidence of an association between a person's age and gender group and whether or not they could accurately assess their own accuracy.